Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 26 series, Rescue the Rockies. And our Rockies have been playing a bit better over the last week and a half or so. We've closed the gap in the National League West on the Los Angeles Dodgers to 3 games, and we are in the number 1 wild card position, which would give us home field advantage for a potential wild card series if the season were to end today. We're trying to guide the team to a 10th consecutive playoff appearance here in our 11th season in Colorado. And as we're looking for a 3rd consecutive title, would love to get past the Dodgers over these last 2.5+ months of the season to hopefully guarantee ourselves a first-round bye rather than potentially having to play in a wild card series. So a lot of work that still needs to be done on the field, but the focus of this episode is going to be the first-year player draft, which is already underway today. As we touched on at the end of our last episode, we've simmed up through our first pick, 33rd overall, and we do have a supplemental pick coming up shortly thereafter. So we are going to be on the clock multiple times in very short order here, which is definitely a positive for us in terms of hopefully being able to add some talent that can help this team down the line. I'd say the primary input that we've gotten from the worldwide scouting department, and appreciate everybody who's given us feedback since the last episode, is that there's a lot of players that people like in this pool, although there's not a clear pound the table number 1 guy to pick among the worldwide scouting department. In general, the worldwide scouting department seems to think that the pitchers who are available for us here are a bit more interesting than the hitters who are available. And the last broad piece of advice that seemed to come from multiple members of the worldwide scouting department was to not rely too heavily on the mock draft, since there are some pretty high quality players in both our mind and our scouts' mind and the OSA's mind who seem to be going later in this mock draft than we would expect. Agree with all that impact. I think it feels like a draft where we're probably not going to feel like we got a surefire superstar with either the 33rd pick in the draft that we have coming up right now or the 38th pick in the draft that we'll have coming shortly by virtue of the compensatory pick we got when Gus Nieves left our team last off-season. But it does seem like a draft where we should be able to come out with at least 4 players that we talked about last episode and really like. And I think there's potential that we could get maybe even 5 or 6 of the guys that we've already talked about. And if things do break that way, even though, again, there's not necessarily a surefire superstar or someone who's going to immediately jump to the majors and help us right now, still feel like hopefully when we finish this draft up and this episode up, we'll feel pretty good about the class that we put together. And one positive thing as we prepare for the draft this year is that we do have excess money in our budget, largely driven by the departure of Nieves and the fact that we didn't replace him with someone extremely expensive this off-season. So we could definitely try to go over slot for a player, which does give us a little more flexibility with the pool of players that we can think about. Even though, as I noted, the general consensus was that the pitchers are a little more interesting than the hitters in this year's draft, still were 3 position players who received first place votes from various members of the worldwide scouting department that we will talk about right now. First is the center fielder Jason McCarty, Dustin Durbin's favorite position player. Really good personality, good speed. Looks like he could be pretty good defensively, especially if we could get that error rating a little higher. The bonus demand is not much at all, and we do think that the 17-year-old could be a pretty good contact hitter with potential to line a lot of extra base hits around Coors Field to go with decent home run power and an acceptable eye. McCarty, for whatever reason, projected to go with the 8th pick in the 5th round in the mock draft. So we probably have a little bit of time with him, especially given that both our scout and the OSA don't necessarily think he's the highest ceiling prospect on the board. Probably not a direction we're going to go here with our first round pick, but certainly somebody that we will keep an eye on. Two other players were a bit more popular. One is the shortstop, Tony Vega. He was the recommendation from both Nichols F. and Casey Callahan. Looking for $3.2 million, like the high work ethic. Respectable defensive infielder. Clearly would hope that perhaps get him into the development lab if we brought him on board and get him better defensively going forward. Looks like a decent potential base runner. Potentially outstanding contact, though, with slightly above average gap power, the home run power, and the eye, both likely to be below average. The switch hitter, Tony Vega, expected to go with the first pick in the supplemental round. So he is a guy who, according to the mock draft, if we want to pick, need to pick right now. Last but certainly not least among the position players is David Snacks Marsh. He was the first choice among position players of Patrick DeBonis and DLL First Base 14, and he was also strongly recommended as our supplemental pick coming up with the 38th pick overall by Peter Hooper, Raven Spawn 3, and Mitch Fonstock. Snacks Marsh looks like potentially outstanding gap power and home run power, pretty good speed, pretty good looking defensively, although not the greatest arm in the world, high adaptability and baseball IQ. With the $9.5 million demand, he will use up a significant amount of the excess money we have that's above what we've put away to pay for our expected slot costs. Certainly something we should consider, but we also do need to consider that we are a team that, as I talked about earlier, is going for a three-peat, certainly a win-now team, and we do want to try to retain as much financial flexibility as possible heading into these last 3 weeks before the trade deadline to ensure that perhaps we can bring on somebody to help. Snacks Marsh projected to go with the 23rd pick in the second round, so we might be able to wait until pick number 38 on him, but odds are he will be off the board by the time our second round selection comes up. And I mentioned that the consensus is that the pitchers available are a little bit stronger, and we kind of see that in the recommendations as well. 4 pitchers at the top of members of the Worldwide Scouting Department's lists for what we should do with this first round pick. The 18-year-old Alex Johnson, a guy looking for $6 million, so certainly above slot at this point, is projected to go with the 19th pick in the third round, so maybe we have a little bit of time on him. But again, as we talked about earlier in the episode, and as if you followed us over the saga of our first 10 plus years here with the OOTP 26, the mock draft in this version of the game definitely underestimates where pitchers in particular end up going. So I don't think we want to put too much stock into being able to wait all that much longer on a pitcher like Alex Johnson. He's the recommendation of Not My Four-Ply. Outstanding personality, high work ethic, high baseball IQ, high adaptability, high leadership, everything that you want in the clubhouse, in addition to loyalty. He will want to get paid, but certainly a great-looking personality. Think he can reach triple digits on the radar gun. Potentially really impressive 4-pitch arsenal if he develops all of those. And we think his stuff, his movement, and his control could all be above average. There were also 3 other pitchers who received support of multiple members of the Worldwide Scouting Department to pick right now. Mark Almquist, the choice of Ravenspawn 3 and Peter Hooper, 21-year-old left-hander out of Alabama, expected to go with the 16th pick in the 3rd round, so just before Mr. Johnson, who we just talked about. Faced a great level of competition, obviously, in Tuscaloosa. High work ethic and baseball IQ, really good stamina, outstanding at holding on runners, not too far off being able to contribute at the major league level right now. The big issue with him is whether that changeup will develop as good as we think it could. In that case, he's got 3 above average to borderline exceptional pitches to go with a usable splitter. If that changeup doesn't develop, he's kind of a fastball, curveball guy with a mediocre changeup and a mediocre splitter to put into the mix. But Almquist, who's looking for $1.8 million, a lefty that certainly would be interesting to consider at 5'9", 165 pounds. The prototypical little lefty in Mark Almquist. A bit more popular with the Worldwide Scouting Department than Almquist was another college pitcher, 22-year-old David Guadrone. Guadrone expected to go with the 21st pick in the 2nd round, so looks like a guy we might be able to get here or with our supplemental pick, but probably don't want to wait any longer than that if he's a guy that we want to bring on board. Guadrone, another lefty, a bit bigger at 6'1", 200 pounds, some good personality traits there with the high adaptability and work ethic. Another guy with good solid stamina, really good at holding on runners. Similar profile, and that Guadrone right now is kind of a 2-pitch guy in terms of his major league quality. Going to be reliant on that changeup developing to have a really good 3-pitch arsenal, but do think his stuff and his movement could both end up above average and about average in terms of his control. Not quite the same velocity as some of the other pitchers we've been talking about, but still certainly looks like he could be a useful major league pitcher and not too far off from potentially being a useful major league pitcher. And last but not least, before we get to the difficult spot of actually making our decisions, is the most popular player with the Worldwide Scouting Department, and that's the young starting pitching prospect Manny Rumble Soto. Mitch Fonstock, Dustin Durbin, Not My 4-Ply, Why Me 943, and Wiz RT all had the high school pitcher on the top of their boards. Another left-handed starting pitching prospect, a guy who's looking for a bit more than slot at this point. High adaptability, think he can reach the mid to high 90s in velocity. Average stamina for a starting pitcher. Very good at holding on runners. We think he could potentially have an outstanding 5-person arsenal, but clearly a lot of work to do as a 17-year-old to build up that arsenal. But ultimately think his stuff, his movement, and his control could all be well above average if Rumble reaches his full potential. Just to put things into context, Soto, according to the mock draft, not expected to go until the 29th pick in the 4th round. And I don't remember if I mentioned it. I think I did mention that Guadrone was expected to go with the 21st pick in the 2nd round. So the mock drafts are telling us to wait on Soto and get better value. The Worldwide Scouting Department is saying he's the most popular selection. Just pick him now. Don't fool around. The fact that he's got a relatively big demand suggests that he and his agent think he should be picked a lot earlier than the 29th pick in the 4th round. And when all is said and done, there's 5 players that are basically, I don't want to say interchangeable, but 5 players that I have higher rank than the rest of the board, perhaps not surprisingly. They are the same 5 players that got multiple pick them now votes from the Worldwide Scouting Department. Among the pitchers, those include the most popular person, the high school starting pitcher Manny Soto, and the 2 college pitchers that we talked about, David Guadron and Mark Almquist. Also, the 2 position players who got support from multiple members of the Worldwide Scouting Department, center fielder David Marsh and shortstop Tony Vega, are also, a little bit of a cut above than of the rest of the pool, at least in my estimation. So when we think about 5 players that we really like, and we have got 2 of the next 6 picks, the only way that we don't get someone we really like with both of these picks is if we pick obviously one of the 5 here, and then the other 4 players all go off back to back to back to back with the next 4 picks. As much as I may want to feel sometimes like OOTP is out to get me, I think the probability of that happening is incredibly low. So I think there's a pretty good chance that we're going to get 2 of the 5 players that we really like with these next 6 picks. I think it's unlikely that any of them will fall to us with our second round pick, number 29 in the second round, but clearly we'd have an opportunity to turn this into a potential franchise-altering draft if that were to occur. Ultimately, I'm not going to play around, and although the mock draft says we can wait, among the pitchers, Manny Soto has the highest ceiling, admittedly among the starting pitchers that we're talking about, with those other 2 guys being college players. He's got the furthest voyage to get to reaching that maximum potential. But with the first pick of ours in the draft, we're going to go with the lefty with the most upside, and we are going to go ahead and bring on board the young starting pitcher Manny Soto. We'll try to save a little bit of money now. As a high schooler, he's not going to be pitching for us this year. So we'll go ahead and draft Rumble Soto with the 33rd pick. As I noted, we do have the flexibility to spend some time trying to sign him, since as a 17-year-old, he's not going to be playing for us in rookie ball this year. So once we get through the draft, I'll try to offer him probably somewhere around $5 million. You may remember, if you probably do because you were just looking at it along with me, that he was looking for about $5.5 million. So we'll try to save a little bit money while still offering him significantly more than slot. Big question now is, do all 4 of the guys that we want with our next pick come off in the next 4 picks? As I said, I don't think that's happening. Maybe a better question is, do any of those 4 guys come off with the next 4 picks, or do we have a opportunity to get a difficult decision out of the way? And I will say, the one guy that I would have went with if all 4 were available was the starting pitching prospect Mark Almquist. I liked the Alabama product. Most of the guys that were left, so definitely disappointed to see him go. As I noted, he was projected to go with the 16th pick in the 3rd round, so similar to Soto, the mock draft was saying that we had a lot of time with him, but unfortunately not the case. Still do have 3 guys that we really like available here with the pick, but I'm not going to lie to you. My dream was that we would get Soto, the high school project, with the first pick, and then Almquist, the pitcher, who's not too far from potentially being able to help us right now with the supplemental pick. And we just missed out by 1 spot on being able to do that. So with our selection of Soto and Almquist off the board, that means that among the pitchers, David Guadrón is the option that we're most interested in with this pick. As we talked about, Guadrón expected to go with the 21st pick in the second round. So if we want to go pitcher with the first 2 picks, now is the time to do that. As I alluded to, I liked Almquist a bit more than Guadrón, but they're both guys who could be helping us in relatively short order. I don't love that Guadrón is almost 22 and a half, so a little bit older, and has only faced that fair competition level at Illinois Springfield. Part of the reason why I preferred Almquist to him. But he could still be a very interesting pick now, and is a guy who's looking for less than slot. OSA really loves him. But again, I trust our scout more than the OSA. The 2 position players, top 2 guys on the board in terms of potential according to our scout. David Marsh, with that $9.5 million demand, is going to be a second player in a row well above slot. Bringing him on board would really limit our ability to help the team right now by bringing on salaries in the trade market, but it doesn't mean it's not the right move for the longer term. Tony Vega, only a little bit above slot in terms of his demand. Like him as a prospect, but certainly there's things not to like with the mediocre fielding ratings and the lack of home run power and the weaker eye, and only a fair competition level for him. Although, to be fair, he's only 18 years old, so the fact that he's committed to Arizona and he's been at the Puerto Rico Baseball Academy probably indicates he's faced a higher level of competition than a lot of his peers in this draft. And it's an interesting decision here because all 3 of these guys are expected to be off the board. Vega, by the time we make our next pick, Vega, who was supposed to go with the first supplemental pick, already expected to be off the board. Marsh, expected to go with the 23rd pick in the second round. And Guadrón, as we've talked about, expected to go with the 21st pick in the second round. I think I'm still going to go back to the college pitcher with a second pick here. Although, as I noted, I preferred Almquist along with Peter Hooper and Ravenspawn 3. Guadrón was actually more popular with the worldwide scouting department, with Rocket Skarmory, Avery Shayam, and Wyme943 having him at the top of their lists. So we'll see if perhaps my prejudice against college players who haven't faced the absolute highest level of competition is unwarranted. And we are going to go ahead and select David Guadrón with our supplemental first round pick. Thanks, Gus Nieves. Hopefully the acquisition of Guadrón will help ease the pain that we're feeling right now from not having your bat in the middle of our lineup. So now the question becomes, does a Marsh or a Vega inexplicably fall to us with our 29th pick in the second round? Given the demand of Marsh, I don't think it's impossible that he does. We'll find out right now. And Marsh is still on the board with that $9.5 million demand. So that's going to give us something to seriously think about here. We're about $2 million less than slot with Guadrone. We're likely to end up about $2 million over slot with Soto. So those two picks will basically even out with the money we budgeted. Marsh will be about $8.3 million more than slot. So when we take a look at where we are financially, we've got about $11.7 million money available now. So that gives us tons of flexibility past the midway point in the season to take on all or a good chunk of a big contract if there's a player that we think can help us win this year. That number would go down to about $3.5 million, assuming ownership lets us use it, which they probably will if we were to pick Mr. Marsh right here. So it's an interesting decision. Clearly, when I think about the quality of the potential players and at this point now the value, given that both Patrick DeBonis and DLL First Base 14 felt that we should have used our first pick on Marsh, and as we talked about, Peter Hooper, Raven Spawn 3, and Mitch Fonstock all felt we should use the supplemental pick on him. I would tend to think that there's probably a few members of the worldwide scouting department who are wondering why I'm not just running this pick up to the commissioner right now. And after spending a little more time offline looking at some of the players that we've already talked about in this episode, as well as some of the relievers that we talked about last time around, other guys like the shortstop John Hone, the outfielder Al Beltran, who we talked about last time around as well. I think this is a rare situation where, because we didn't spend almost every penny we had this past off season on free agents, we've got an opportunity for more financial flexibility in the draft. We've got a guy here in the second round that our scout thinks has an incredibly high ceiling, very popular with the worldwide scouting department, as I noted. You could maybe, if you wanted to be cute, say with that $9.5 million demand that he'll wait until the third round. But a good personality with the high adaptability and baseball IQ, good fielder, potentially prodigious home run power, and a nice gap power and speed combination. Snacks Marsh sitting here for us in the second round seems like something that we just need to do right now. So that gives us 3 of the 5 top players on our board with our first 3 picks, given where these guys were all supposed to go in the draft. I think there's really good value. If I want to second guess myself, maybe I say we should have taken the pitcher out of Alabama, Almquist, with the first pick, and then hoped Soto would fall to us with that supplemental pick. But because ultimately I wanted to go with the guy that had the highest ceiling, I can obviously second guess myself on that right now. But if I had done the opposite and taken Almquist first and then Soto had come off the board, I'd be kicking myself for not taking the guy with the highest ceiling among the pitchers. So still pretty happy with the way these first 3 picks have worked out with Soto, Guadrone, and now David Marsh. And our third round pick comes down to 2 guys to me, one of whom we've already talked about, and that's the center fielder Jason McCarty. He was the recommendation of Dustin Durbin, a guy who's not expected to go in the mock draft until the 8th pick in the 5th round, when we look at his personality, look at his speed, look at his profile, look at what the OSA thinks of him, it seems crazy to think he would last till the 5th round. He's committed to Duke. But his bonus demand indicates he might be a little uncertain about whether he's really going to make it or not. Like the durability with McCarty, but the mock draft says he's going to be around with the 28th pick in the 4th round. The other guy that we're thinking about is a pitcher who we talked about last episode. It's not the starting pitching prospect, Jim El Nueve duel. The lack of control scares me off of him too much, and for the same reason it's not the closer, Jim, the natural Jeff Coat. I just can't pick guys with that kind of control. I know some of you like those guys more than I do. But it's the high school closer, Mike Gallagher, who we think has potential to be a pretty interesting right-handed reliever with a nice sinker-slider combo. Older high schooler at 19 years old, but those pitches are already close to major league quality. Got some work to do on his movement and control, like the high work ethic and baseball IQ. Gallagher not expected to go in the first 5 rounds of the draft, but as we know, the pitchers tend to go earlier, and you can see even in recent picks, there's been a reliever, closer, and a reliever among the last 14 or so picks in the draft. So the relievers are definitely starting to come off the board. I think either Gallagher or McCarthy would be a really nice addition to the team. Even though McCarthy is a 5th round pick, is expected to come off the board before Gallagher, who's not expected to go in the first 5. As we've talked about, I think the mock drafts underestimate when pitchers are going to go. So we're going to go with the closer, Mike Gallagher here. A nice low demand from him that we will meet. And we'll hope that the outfielder Jason McCarty lasts another round for us. The mock draft says he will. But the one thing we know for certain about mock drafts is that they're always wrong. And it was wrong this time as well. McCarty came off with the 10th pick in the 4th round, so he went basically a full round before the mock draft expected him to go. If we were able to add him into the mix here as well, would be feeling it was a potentially franchise-altering draft for us. But I'm still confident there's going to be an interesting player on the board that we like here, just probably not someone we liked quite as much as McCarty. Sorry for disappointing you, Dustin. And some of the other relievers that we've talked about in previous episodes have all come off the board as well. Top 3 pitchers on the board at this point in terms of their potential. Starting pitcher Edwin Flores looks like an interesting guy to add into the mix, but with the impossible signability and the big money that we're already going to be spending, I don't think that makes sense. Closer Jose Martinez, an 18-year-old. Looks like he could be a pretty interesting right-handed reliever. His fastball is already almost major league quality. Think he can get it up over 100 miles an hour. Could be combining that 100-mile-an-hour fastball with an outstanding change if everything works out. So his stuff could be filthy down the line. Cheech Martinez. And a starting pitching prospect, Sam Mustache Call. Don't really love his arsenal, although we do think the movement and the control could both be absolutely incredible. I don't know that I take Mustache Call here just because the stuff is so potentially putrid. But given that he does have high adaptability, high baseball IQ, does have extreme ground ball tendencies. He's still on the market around from now. Might be someone to consider. OSA thinks even less of his stuff than we do, so that's an argument to maybe wait on him. Not a profile that I typically draft just because such an extreme profile where the stuff is clearly not major league quality, but the movement and the control are both potentially world class is just such a unique profile that might be interesting to play around with. And just because he's so well developed, we will also talk about starting pitcher Jason Axelson. Left-handed pitcher out of UCLA, so he's been facing a great level of competition. Like the high adaptability and work ethic, ground ball pitcher who throws in the high 90s, good stamina, good at holding on runners. His 3-pitch arsenal is already outstanding to major league quality, essentially. The stuff is already there. We think the movement is going to be there. The control for the lefty is the big concern. Walked 66 batters in 134 innings for UCLA this year, although in the draft league, only 6 walks and 7 starts. OSA thinks his control is even worse than our scout does, and the OSA in general is a lot more negative on him than our scout. So between Axelson and Call, there's a couple of pitchers that I'm intrigued by. I mean, if you were to combine Axelson's stuff with Call's movement and control, could potentially have the greatest pitcher in baseball history. But unfortunately, I don't think there's any way that we could actually do that. And I ultimately think that one of those 2 pitchers will still be around for us if we want to take a 5th-round flyer on one of them. So we're going to go with the center fielder Victor Gonzalez, 17-year-old, $2.2 million demand, so another guy who's above slot at this point, which isn't optimal for us. But potentially really good contact hitter with above-average gap power and a pretty good eye. Not going to hit a ton of home runs, but he's also, not a guy who's only going to hit 2 or 3 home runs a year. Good range, decent speed, really good bunter. For a 4th-round pick, I think that Victor Gonzalez is a interesting option to consider. And that is the direction that we're going to go. Although, as I noted, with his demand being higher, it's going to use up some more of the money that we potentially have to help our team this year. Fortunately, Gallagher likely to be able to be signed for $500,000 less than expected there, which helps us close the gap a little bit. But between Marsh and what he's looking for and Gonzalez and what he's looking for, our ability to take on contracts is going to be limited, which basically just means we'll probably have to give up more in terms of prospects. Doesn't necessarily mean that there's players that we won't be able to bring on board. We're just going to have to pay more to do it. So we'll go ahead and draft Gonzalez here. And we'll see if one of those intriguing pitchers sneaks to us or snuck to us. And the starting pitching prospect Axelson did. So the high schooler who was looking for $1.4 million with the poor stuff, but the incredible movement and control is off the board. But the college pitcher who we're worried about his control and really nothing else is still on the board here in the 5th round. Looking back at where things went, Sam Call came off with the 7th pick in the 5th round, so not too far after we selected Victor Gonzalez. I'm going to put him on our list of prospects to track. Will be interesting to see if he can overcome that absolutely putrid stuff by virtue of keeping the ball down and having pinpoint accuracy and a lot of movement on his pitches as well. So even though I was talking earlier about those relievers with the brutal potential control, as well as the high school starter with the brutal potential control that I didn't want to touch, Axelson's potential ceiling in terms of his control is a bit higher. And I think as a 5th round pick, he's a pretty interesting prospect to consider bringing on board. Lefty starter who can throw close to 100 miles an hour. He does have that high adaptability and work ethic. Don't know if we're going to be able to create something out of nothing in terms of his control. But for a 5th round pick, I think that Mr. Axelson is a pretty interesting guy to add into the mix. And another guy who's looking for slightly under slot, which will help us on the margins to bring the more expensive guys like Soto, Marsh, and Gonzalez on board eventually. And the draft is now over. Don't feel like we did anything all that notable in the last 15 rounds of the draft, although hopefully we'll be proven wrong by someone who will be an important contributor for us in the not too distant future. As I noted, 3 guys, all high schoolers, way above slot. The 4th round center fielder, Victor Gonzalez. 2nd round center fielder, David Marsh. And our 1st round pick in Manny Soto. Since they're all high schoolers who aren't going to be playing this year, we're going to offer them all a little bit less than they're looking for. Hope that maybe we are able to get someone for a little bit less here. If not, we'll offer them every penny that they're looking for. But clearly would prefer to save a little bit of money. We'll go ahead and offer Manny Soto $5,100. Submit that offer to him and see what happens there. David Marsh. It's going to be extremely hard for us to convince him. We're going to have to at least meet the demand. He very well could be lying about that, as we know. We'll get a little more risky here. Offer him $750,000 less than he's looking for. Don't think he'll accept that, but we're trying to save a little bit of money here. Similarly with Victor Gonzalez, offer him $1.75 million. And we will see what happens. Got 5 games left until the All-Star break. As I noted, we've been playing our best baseball of the year recently with a 7-1 record here in the month of July. We've got 2 left against the Diamondbacks and then 3 at home against Seattle before we get to the All-Star break. And maybe we'll get a player or 2 signed between now and then in the pool of players that we drafted. And we have already got our supplemental 1st-round pick signed, David Guadron. Looks like he was automatically assigned to the California League. I'm assuming he's going to be able to handle that level well. Yeah, he could be a guy who we move rapidly up through the organization in the coming weeks. But we will start him in A-ball for at least a little while. We will set his strategy to ensure that he will be starting for us hopefully every 5th day down there in A-ball. And we'll see if maybe we can catch lightning in a bottle with Mr. Guadron. Good news, we won the 2nd game of the series against Arizona, closed the gap on the Dodgers to just 2 games at this point. And importantly, Mike Girard, after that awful injury near the end of last season that cost him the playoffs and cost him the first 92 games of this season, now ready to begin a rehab assignment. 24-year-old is outstanding defensively, and he's got some pop in his bat, but he is fragile physically, doesn't draw a lot of walks, and doesn't have a ton of speed. But certainly looking forward to hopefully having our former supplemental first-round pick, back on the major league team, maybe right after the All-Star break. And we ended up sweeping the Diamondbacks, which pushed us to just one game behind the Dodgers, who lost again. Mike Gallagher, the reliever that we picked in the third round, is now also joining us in. I guess they assigned him to the California League, even though he is an older player. Looks like he can actually hold his own there. I don't see a real reason to wait the start of his career, even though he's only 19 years old. Looks like he can hold his own in A-ball, so that's where Mr. Gallagher is going to begin his career, even though he was in high school just weeks ago. And the good news is we head into the final game before the All-Star break. We've continued winning, beating Seattle 14-3 and 7-6. Unfortunately, the Dodgers have won both of their games, so we're still a game behind. But good to be heading into the All-Star break and heading into the last couple weeks before the trade deadline, feeling really good about how this team is playing on the field. Victor Gonzalez, perhaps not surprisingly, wants more money. Kind of figured that's the way things tend to happen with these guys. I guess we could wait longer. That is a way to save some money, is to play the game of chicken with them. But because we really would prefer to know how much money we're going to have available to take on contracts as we get closer to the trade deadline, and to not potentially box ourselves out of being able to negotiate with somebody, feel like we've got to be a little more aggressive getting offers on the table with these guys over the next couple of weeks, which likely, in all probability, means that we're going to end up giving Soto, Marsh, and Gonzalez all exactly what they were originally looking for. And no new news as far as signings as we prepare to finish up the episode and break for the All-Star game. But we did sweep the 6 games at home against the Diamondbacks and the Mariners. The Dodgers swept their series as well, so we're still a game behind them in the standings. But our .583 winning percentage is third in the National League, behind just the Mets and the Dodgers. So we are in a situation where if we take the division, we likely get a first-round bye. If we lose the division, we're likely hosting a wild card series. As we break for the All-Star game, Kevin Roberts Jr. trying to win a third MVP in 4 seasons, having a monster year, leading the league with a .354 average, third in homers, leading the league in ribbies, leading the league in OPS, leading the league in batter war. And pitching-wise, Leo Martinez, who's looking for a second consecutive Cy Young Award, also having a monster year, leads the league with 12 wins, second with a .220 ERA, first in WAR among pitchers at 4.9. His number 2 starter behind him, the former ace Noah Schultz, tied for second in the National League with 141 strikeouts. Have a feeling we're going to be hearing some or all of those names when we take a look at who made the All-Star team for us. Before that, though, we'll take a look at the All-Star Prospects game roster and take a look at how many of our Rockies made it there. Dan Patterson, the former second-round pick, still viewed as one of the best prospects in our organization, one of the best prospects in baseball. Went 5-1 with a .231 ERA and high A-ball. Promoted him to Hartford not that long ago. 4-0 with a 2.53 ERA there. Patterson doesn't necessarily look like he's going to be a major league ace, but with a potential 5-pitch arsenal, stuff and movement that we think could be a bit above average, solid stamina, and a great influence in the clubhouse. Even though he's probably going to walk some batters, think he probably has a future with us at the major league level. Phil Dingwell, who is just awaiting promotion at this point, having a ridiculous season in AAA, hitting .351, 26 homers, and 64 ribbies. mentioned in the comments to the last episode in response to some thoughts from Patrick DeBonis about bringing up Dingwell now. Hoping to thread the needle of playing well over the next month and a half or so, and then using him as a September call-up. So we'll put him on the 40-man roster before then if we do that, so he can be eligible for the postseason, but would love to have him in the running for a compensatory pick as a potential Rookie of the Year next year. So going to probably hold off on promoting Dingwell for a while, but nice to see the recognition for him. Carlos Davila having a monster year for us in the Dominican Rookie League, hitting .312 there with a 138 WRC plus after he put up a 141 WRC plus in the ACL before that season came to an end. The 18-year-old likely going to be in single A next year when he turns 19, but Bear Barrel, a big IAFA signing from a couple of years ago, the number 17 prospect in baseball, still looks like he could be a very good one for us when all is said and done. So 3 of our players in the All-Star Prospects game. I'm guessing we're going to have more than 3 in the Major League All-Star game this year. Pitching-wise, no surprise to see Leo Martinez and Noah Schultz as All-Stars again. Gregorio Olvera, a bit of a surprise. He's a middle and long reliever for us, but he's put up a 2.92 ERA over 64 and 2/3 innings, so a big workload for him. He's another guy who's kind of on the margin of being in the mix as a 5th starter for us, so nice to see some recognition for the former 7th-round pick. And Justin Gibson, who has been a stalwart of our bullpen for several years after being a 4th-round pick back in 2028. 3.55 ERA over 50 and 2/3 innings. Hasn't been as effective this year as perhaps in previous seasons. He is also a guy who finally is heading into free agency after this year. He's always been looking for big bucks, $18.5 million over 4 years, or $18.5 million average for 4 years. Perhaps a more accurate way to describe that is what he's looking for. So still uncertain whether he'll be back with us next year, but 4 members of our Colorado Rockies pitching staff named All-Stars this year. Position players, one of the more controversial guys we've drafted over the years just because he's been so injury prone and it took him so long to develop. But Derby Mahez, in what we hope will be his first full season in the major leagues, makes the All-Star team as a second baseman, hitting .285, 22 doubles, 4 triples, 10 homers. He's also stolen 13 bases, put up a 131 WRC plus with a 2.5 WAR. Defense popular with the fans, good base runner. How good his bat is ultimately going to be and how often he's going to be in the lineup are the question. But nice to see the former first-round pick out of UCLA getting some recognition as an All-Star this year. And the last All-Star of the 6 on our team this year is the least surprising, and that's, of course, Mr. Five Tools, Kevin Roberts Jr., who is putting up perhaps the finest season of the sparkling start to his career. Former 5th overall pick in 2026 has developed incredibly. Hard to believe he'll be turning a fictional 27 years old in less than 2 weeks. Doesn't look like our old buddy Gus Nieves made the All-Star team this year. It's only been a week of action since we checked on him in the last episode, but particularly with us being at the All-Star break and having used that compensatory pick we got for Mr. Nieves' departure on the college pitcher David Guadron, feels like a good time to check in on what Pex is doing this year. 238 average, 20 homers, 52 ribbies, so still one of the better power hitters in the National League. But that 115 WRC plus and 0.9 WAR that he's put up this year definitely a step back from what he had done in recent years, and quite honestly, in 6 out of his 7 years with us, the 1 year that he was inexplicably not all that productive was his second season with us in 2029, when he hit 258 with 34 homers and 97 ribbies, but due to his limited defensive skills and a lot of time at DH, put up just a 0.5 WAR for us. But looks like this could be, at age 34, the second worst season in the majors of Nieves' career. So we'll see what he becomes as he gets older. But overall, pleased with where we're sitting here. It's been a struggle to get here. If you followed us through the previous episodes, you've known that 0-3 in March, 5 games above 500 in April, 500 in May, 3 games above 500 in June. We've been a good team, but certainly not a great team throughout the year. But now with this 12-1 month in July, ranked second in the National League in runs scored, third in runs allowed, and the 56-40 record we have is right on Pythagorean expectations. So playing our best baseball of the year. We've got a bunch of all-stars, and we'll be looking for some help in the trade market. Before we finish things off, just take a quick look at who's on the trade block. Not that our pool of potential players is limited by that. Definitely several guys who could start for us. Don't know that there's a true number 3 starter, which is what we're really looking for at this point. But between the likes of Dominic Vogel, Alec Marsh, Justin Florentino, and Hunter Brown, certainly some pitchers, all of whom are likely making pretty good money, that we could think about bringing on board, as well as some relievers as well. Take a look at the top hitters who are on the trade block. And again, we're not limited by who's on the trade block. Bobby Witt Jr. would certainly be an interesting guy to bring on board. 35 years old and fragile physically, but in the last year of a contract. Unfortunately, we won't be able to retain much of, or we'll have to have the team trading him, the Royals, retain most of his contract if we're going to bring him on board, which is going to push the cost up. Don't love the low adaptability and work ethic, but clearly he remains a very productive major league player. The thing that I don't love about him is that he's not as good defensively at shortstop as Ezekiel Tovar is right now, but unfortunately that's the only position that BW Jr. is trained to play and competent at this point. Certainly some other interesting names to consider on the list. We'll be spending some time offline looking at them. Jefferson Rojas could be an interesting guy to consider as another infielder. Another guy who's in the final year of his contract, wrecked physically, but a little more versatile defensively, can play second or short. Good influence in the clubhouse, and a bat that still looks useful at the major league level, although just to 87 WRC plus this year. But the price for him would presumably be less than Bobby Witt Jr. in the trade market. So definitely a lot of interesting players for us to consider. But as we sit here on June 16th, feeling pretty good about what we did in the draft, how our prospects are doing, and how the team has been performing over the last several weeks at this point. And the last thing before we finish up the episode, check in on Mike Girard. Unfortunately, he's only played 1 game in Albuquerque, as I think they're off for the All-Star break as well. 0 for 3 in that game. Probably hasn't shaken all the rust off, given that he was not involved in spring training and hasn't played baseball in close to a year. So likely we'll be hoping Albuquerque plays a game or 2 before we get back from the All-Star break. If that doesn't happen, though, maybe he's down there until the end of next weekend, and then we can bring him up to the majors. And with that, we will call it an episode. Until the next time, thanks so much for watching, and hope you have a great day.